Picture this. It's 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in Harlem, winter of 1959, and Mickey Spillane, yeah, that Mickey Spillane, the Irish kid who thought he owned Hell's Kitchen, is sitting in a booth at Small's Paradise with 3 of his Westies boys. They're drinking bourbon that costs more than most families in Harlem make in a week. They're laughing. Loud, obnoxious laughter that cuts through the cigarette smoke like a knife. And everyone in that room, the waiters, the musicians packing up their horns, the bartender wiping down glasses, they all know something Mickey doesn't. That laughter, it's about to die. See, 2 weeks ago, Mickey got a message. Not a threat, not a warning with guns or broken fingers attached to it. Just words. A simple, almost polite note delivered by a kid who couldn't have been more than 14, wearing a newsboy cap and high-top Converse. The message was brief. Harlem ain't for sale. Respectfully, leave it alone. No signature. Didn't need one. Everyone knew who sent it. Ellsworth Raymond Bumpy Johnson, the man who ran Harlem like it was his living room, who could shut down a block with a phone call, who had cops, judges, and even some FBI agents on a first-name basis. But Mickey laughed. His boys laughed. They passed that note around their table at a dive bar in Hell's Kitchen like it was the punchline to the funniest joke they'd ever heard. Because to them, Bumpy Johnson was old news, a relic, a man stuck in the 1940s while the world moved on. The Italians were taking over, the Irish were expanding, and Harlem was just another piece of real estate waiting to be claimed. So Mickey did what every young, arrogant gangster does when they think they're untouchable. He ignored it. Worse, he mocked it. He sent word back through the streets, through the runners and the numbers guys, that Bumpy Johnson could take his respectfully and shove it where the sun don't shine. And then, nothing happened. No retaliation, no drive-by, no bodies floating in the East River, just silence, which, to Mickey, proved his point. The old man was soft, finished. But here's what Mickey didn't understand, and what I'm about to show you, is that in Harlem, silence isn't weakness. It's a countdown, because while Mickey was laughing, Harlem was doing something far more dangerous than loading guns. It was closing doors, cutting wires, erasing names, and by the time Mickey realized what was happening, it was already too late to stop it. So here's my question for you. Would you have taken Bumpy's warning seriously? Or would you have laughed it off like Mickey did? Drop a comment and let me know. And if you want to see how one of the coldest, most calculated moves in organized crime history went down, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happened next didn't make headlines. It didn't need to. It just happened. And when it was over, the Westies learned a lesson that every gangster in New York still remembers today. When Bumpy Johnson stops talking, that's when you should start worrying. Let's rewind 3 weeks. Harlem, late 1959. To understand what happened, you gotta understand who Bumpy Johnson really was. Not the guy from the movies, not the legend or the myth, the man. Born in South Carolina in 1905, Bumpy came up to Harlem during the tail end of the Harlem Renaissance. He wasn't a talker, wasn't flashy. He wore tailored suits, read books, quoted Shakespeare when the mood hit him. But don't let that fool you. He was a stone-cold strategist who understood one thing better than anyone else in the game. Power isn't about who has the most guns. It's about who controls the flow. For over 2 decades, Bumpy ran Harlem's numbers racket, the lottery of the streets. Every day, thousands of people bet nickels and dimes on 3-digit numbers, hoping to hit it big. And Bumpy made sure that system ran smoother than a Swiss watch. He paid cops, protected shopkeepers, made sure grandmothers got their winnings on time. In Harlem, Bumpy wasn't feared because he was violent. He was respected because he kept the peace. He was the neighborhood's unofficial mayor, judge, and executioner, all rolled into one. But by 1959, the landscape was shifting. The Italian mafia, guys like Vito Genovese and Carlo Gambino, they were expanding. They wanted a piece of Harlem's action. And then there were the Irish gangs, specifically the Westies. Now, the Westies were different. They didn't play by the old rules. They came out of Hell's Kitchen, a neighborhood so rough that even cops walked in pairs. These guys were young, hungry, and absolutely ruthless. They dismembered bodies, stuffed rivals into car trunks and left them in the Hudson. They didn't negotiate. They took. And their leader, Mickey Spillane, was a walking ego with a god complex. Mid-30s, handsome in that brutal Irish way, with a reputation for solving problems with a baseball bat first and questions never. To Mickey, organized crime wasn't about diplomacy, it was about dominance. And when he looked at Harlem, he saw an aging king sitting on a throne that was up for grabs. So Mickey started making moves, small at first. He sent guys to shake down bookies on the edges of Harlem, 125th Street, near the border where Harlem blurred into other territories. He opened up a couple of illegal gambling spots. Nothing big, just enough to test the waters. He made it known that the Westies were open for business, and if you wanted protection, you paid them. Not Bumpy. Word got back to Bumpy fast. It always did. He had eyes everywhere. Shoeshine boys, cab drivers, bartenders. So Bumpy did what he always did. He reached out, not with violence, with respect. He sent that message: Harlem ain't for sale. Respectfully, leave it alone. And Mickey laughed. He told his boys, "Old man thinks he can scare me. With a note? What's he gonna do? Read me a bedtime story?" That's when the real story begins. See, Bumpy Johnson wasn't trying to scare Mickey. He was giving him a choice, a way out. Because Bumpy understood something about power that Mickey never would. The most dangerous enemy isn't the one who threatens you. It's the one who doesn't need to. So here's what I want to know. Do you think Mickey had any shot at taking Harlem? Or was he already a dead man walking the second he ignored that note? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're starting to see why Bumpy Johnson is considered one of the most brilliant criminal minds in American history, stick with me, because what comes next is a masterclass in psychological warfare. Now let's talk about what Mickey was really after, because it wasn't just about respect or territory, it was about money, serious money. Harlem's numbers racket in 1959 was pulling in an estimated $50 million a year. That's over $500 million in today's dollars. Every day, cash flowed through Harlem like a river, and Bumpy controlled the dam. For Mickey and the Westies, that kind of money was more than tempting. It was intoxicating. Mickey had done the math. He figured if he could muscle in, even just take 20% of Harlem's action, that's $10 million a year. Enough to expand into new territories, buy off more cops, build a criminal empire that would rival the Italians. And all he had to do was push out one old man. So Mickey doubled down. He didn't just ignore Bumpy's warning. He decided to make a statement. He sent his own message back, not through a kid with a note, through action. One night, a numbers runner named Clarence, a guy who'd been working for Bumpy for 15 years, got jumped outside a pool hall on 147th Street. 3 of Mickey's boys cornered him in an alley. They didn't kill him, didn't even break any bones, but they took his cash bag, $3 grand in small bills, and they left him with a message. Tell Bumpy the Westies are in charge now. If he's got a problem with that, he knows where to find us. When Clarence stumbled back to Bumpy's spot, a social club on Lenox Avenue where Bumpy held court like a king in his castle, he was shaking. Not from fear of the Westies, from fear of what Bumpy would do. Because in Harlem, letting someone disrespect you like that, it was a death sentence. Everyone knew Bumpy would have to respond. The question was how. Bumpy listened. Quiet. Calm. He sat in his leather chair, smoking a cigar, wearing a charcoal 3-piece suit like he was about to head to church. The room was silent except for the sound of Miles Davis playing low on a record player in the corner. Bumpy's lieutenants stood around him waiting for the word, waiting for him to say, "Get the guns. Let's go to war." But Bumpy didn't say that. Instead, he looked at Clarence and said, "You good? They hurt you?" Clarence shook his head. Bumpy nodded. "Good. Go home. Rest up." And that was it. No yelling, no threats, no plan of attack. Bumpy just went back to smoking his cigar. His lieutenants were confused. One of them, a guy named Frank Lucas, that Frank Lucas who'd later become a legend in his own right, he couldn't hold it in. He said, "Bump, we gonna let them disrespect us like that? We gotta hit back. Show them who runs this." Bumpy looked at him, didn't blink, and he said something that nobody in that room understood. At the time. I already did. See, while Mickey was busy laughing and making bold moves, Bumpy was making phone calls. Quiet ones. To people Mickey didn't even know existed. Bumpy called the suppliers, the guys who provided the Westies with their liquor, their cigarettes, their stolen goods. He called the fences who bought their hot merchandise. He called the cops on his payroll and told them to start writing tickets, making arrests, being a pain in the ass for anyone associated with the Westies. But most importantly, Bumpy called every single shop owner, landlord and business operator in Harlem, and told them the same thing. The Westies aren't welcome here. Anyone who does business with them does business without me. And in Harlem, doing business without Bumpy Johnson wasn't just bad for your wallet. It was impossible. Within 48 hours, the Westies gambling spots in Harlem were empty. No customers. The bars they were trying to shake down closed early. The bookies they were trying to recruit stopped answering their phones. It was like Harlem had collectively decided that the Westies didn't exist. Mickey didn't get it at first. He thought it was a coincidence. Bad luck. But then, one of his guys came back and said, "Boss, nobody's talking to us. It's like we're ghosts." And that's when Mickey started to feel it. Not fear, not yet, but something worse. Doubt. Because here's the thing about criminal organizations. They run on reputation, on the idea that people fear you or need you. But what happens when an entire neighborhood decides you're irrelevant? What happens when the very air you breathe is controlled by someone else? Mickey tried to fight it. He sent more guys into Harlem, tried to force the issue. But every move he made, every corner he tried to claim, it was like pushing against a wall that wouldn't budge. Harlem wasn't fighting back. It was just not there. And Bumpy? He still hadn't lifted a finger. So, here's my question. Who's the real villain here? Mickey, the young gangster trying to build an empire? Or Bumpy, the old king who controls an entire neighborhood with invisible strings? Let me know in the comments. And if you're starting to realize just how deep this psychological game goes, stay with me. Because the strategy Bumpy used to dismantle the Westies is something you won't believe. Let's get into the mind of Bumpy Johnson. Because what happened next wasn't luck. It wasn't even about muscle. It was pure, calculated genius. See, most gangsters think power is about fear, about making people scared to cross you. But Bumpy understood something deeper. Real power is about control, about making people need you so much that the idea of going against you doesn't even cross their minds. Bumpy had spent decades building Harlem into a machine that ran on loyalty, mutual benefit, and trust. He wasn't just a crime boss. He was a community leader. He paid for funerals when families couldn't afford them. He made sure kids had food during the holidays. He kept the streets safe from outside predators, whether they were rival gangs, corrupt cops, or greedy businessmen. In Harlem, Bumpy was more than respected. He was essential. So when the Westies came in thinking they could just take over, they weren't just fighting Bumpy. They were fighting an entire ecosystem that Bumpy had carefully cultivated for 20 years. But here's where it gets brilliant. Bumpy didn't fight the Westies directly. He didn't need to. Instead, he used something far more powerful. Absence. Think about it. If Bumpy had gone to war, sent shooters, started a body count, the Westies would have fought back. They were good at violence. That's what they knew. But Bumpy didn't give them a war. He gave them nothing. No confrontation, no drama. Just a slow, suffocating silence. Bumpy called in every favor he had. And in Harlem, he had a lot of favors. He told the bootleggers to stop supplying the Westies bars. He told the numbers runners to avoid their territory. He told the local beat cops, guys who took Bumpy's money every week, to hassle any Westies operation they saw. Not enough to make headlines, just enough to make life miserable. And then Bumpy did something even smarter. He started spreading a rumor, quietly, through the right channels. He let it be known that the Westies were bad for business, that they were reckless, that they couldn't be trusted. And in the underworld, reputation is everything. Once people think you're a liability, you're done. Within 2 weeks, the Westies' operations in Harlem were dead in the water. Their gambling spots had no customers. Their shakedowns went nowhere because shop owners would rather close their doors than pay a gang that Bumpy Johnson had blacklisted. Even the Italian mafia, guys who hated Bumpy, started avoiding the Westies because they didn't want to be associated with a crew that couldn't even hold down a single neighborhood. Mickey Spillane was furious. He'd never been beaten like this. He'd been shot at, stabbed, arrested, but he'd never been ignored, and that was eating him alive. So Mickey did what desperate men do. He decided to make a big move, a statement. He was going to go straight to the source. He was going to walk into Bumpy's territory, find the old man, and settle this face to face. Now Bumpy knew this was coming. He always knew. His network was so tight that he probably knew Mickey was planning this before Mickey's own guys did. And here's where Bumpy made his final move. He let Mickey come. One night, Mickey walked into Jock's place, a bar on 145th Street that was Bumpy's spot. Mickey brought 4 of his best guys. Big dudes, armed, ready for whatever. The place went silent the second they walked in. Every eye in that bar turned to them, not with fear, with pity, because everyone knew what Mickey didn't. When you walk into Bumpy Johnson's house uninvited, you're not making a power move. You're walking into a trap. Mickey found Bumpy sitting at a corner table playing checkers with an old man who worked at the post office. Bumpy looked up, smiled, this calm, almost grandfatherly smile, and said, "Mickey, good to see you. You here to play, or you here to talk?" Mickey wasn't in the mood for games. He leaned in, hands on the table, trying to intimidate. "I got your message, old man, but here's mine. Harlem's changing. You can either get with the program or get out of the way." Bumpy didn't flinch. He moved a checker piece, crowned his king. Then he looked up at Mickey and said, "You know what the problem is with you young guys? You think power is about who yells the loudest, but real power is about who's still standing when the noise stops." Mickey sneered. "You threatening me?" Bumpy shook his head. "Nah, I don't threaten. I warn. And I already warned you. You didn't listen. That's on you." There was a long silence, the kind that makes your skin crawl, and then Bumpy said something that Mickey would never forget. "You came into my neighborhood, tried to take what's mine, and I let you. You know why? Because I wanted to see if you were smart enough to recognize when you were out of your depth, but you're not. So now, I'm done being polite." Mickey tried to respond, but before he could, every door in that bar opened, and in walked 15 of Bumpy's guys. Not rushing, not drawing guns, just walking in, calm, controlled, like they'd been waiting for their cue. Mickey looked around. His boys reached for their weapons, but Bumpy raised a hand. "Easy. Nobody's dying tonight, unless you make me change my mind." Mickey's jaw clenched. He knew he was outnumbered, outplayed, and for the first time in his life, he realized he wasn't the smartest guy in the room. Bumpy stood up, buttoned his suit jacket, and walked right up to Mickey, close enough that Mickey could smell the cigar smoke on his breath. And Bumpy said, "I gave you respect. I gave you a way out, but you chose this. So here's how it's gonna go. You're gonna walk out of Harlem tonight, and you're never gonna come back. Not you, not your boys, not your business. You're done here. And if I hear your name in my neighborhood again, I won't send a message. I'll send a message that even the cops can't ignore." Mickey wanted to argue, wanted to fight, but he couldn't, because in that moment he understood. Bumpy Johnson wasn't just a gangster. He was a force of nature, and you don't fight nature, you respect it. So Mickey did the only thing he could do. He left, and he never came back. So here's my question for you. Is Bumpy a hero for protecting his community? Or is he just a smarter criminal who knew how to win without pulling a trigger? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that button, because the ending to this story is about to blow your mind. Now you might be thinking, that's the end. Mickey left. Bumpy won. Story over, right? Wrong. Because the real climax of this story isn't about what happened in that bar. It's about what happened after. And this is where Bumpy Johnson proved he wasn't just a local legend. He was a criminal mastermind on a level most people never even heard of. See, Mickey left Harlem that night, but he didn't leave quietly. He was humiliated, embarrassed. And in the world of organized crime, embarrassment is worse than death. Because if word gets out that you got punked, you lose everything. Your reputation, your crew, your power. So Mickey did what every gangster does when they're backed into a corner. He started talking. Big, loud, telling anyone who'd listen that Bumpy Johnson was a nobody, that he'd walked out by choice, that Harlem was beneath him anyway. And you know what? Some people believed him, because Mickey was good at spinning stories. He convinced enough people that his retreat was strategic, not a surrender. He even started making moves back in Hell's Kitchen, trying to rebuild his image. But Bumpy was 10 steps ahead. Here's what Mickey didn't know. While he was out there running his mouth, Bumpy was making deals. Real deals. With the people who actually mattered. Bumpy sat down with the Italian families, Genovese, Gambino, Lucchese, guys who technically were his competitors. But Bumpy wasn't interested in competition. He was interested in stability. So he made them an offer. You leave Harlem to me, and I'll make sure none of my people step on your toes. We keep our lanes. No wars. No headlines. Just business. And the Italians agreed. Not because they were scared of Bumpy, but because Bumpy made sense. Wars are expensive, headlines bring heat, and Bumpy was offering them peace in exchange for respect. It was a win-win. But here's the kicker. Bumpy also made sure the Italians knew about Mickey's failed move into Harlem. He made sure they understood that the Westies were reckless, unpredictable, dangerous to be around. And in doing so, Bumpy didn't just protect his own territory. He isolated Mickey completely. Within a month, the Westies were cut off. The Italians wouldn't work with them. Other Irish gangs distanced themselves. Even the corrupt cops who used to take Mickey's money started looking the other way. Because Bumpy had made it clear, anyone who sides with the Westies is siding against Harlem, and nobody wanted that smoke. Mickey tried to fight it. He tried to rebuild, but it was like fighting quicksand. The more he struggled, the deeper he sank. His crew started to fracture. Guys left, went to other gangs. Some just disappeared, because in the criminal world, loyalty only lasts as long as success, and Mickey was no longer successful. By the spring of 1960, Mickey Spillane was finished. Not dead, not arrested, just irrelevant. He still had his spot in Hell's Kitchen, but he never expanded beyond it. He never took Harlem. He never built his empire. And every time someone brought up his name, the story that followed was the same. He tried to take on Bumpy Johnson, didn't go well. And Bumpy went back to running Harlem like nothing had ever happened. Because to him, it was just another Tuesday. Just another young punk who thought he could take what wasn't his. But here's the lesson that everyone in the underworld learned from this. Bumpy Johnson didn't win because he was the toughest. He didn't win because he had the most guns. He won because he understood the game better than anyone else. He understood that power isn't about who yells the loudest. It's about who controls the narrative, who controls the flow, who makes sure that when the dust settles, they're still standing. And that's why, to this day, Bumpy Johnson is remembered as one of the greatest criminal strategists in American history, not because of how many people he killed, but because of how many people he didn't have to kill. So if this story gave you chills, if you're sitting there realizing just how deep this chess game really was, do me a favor, hit that like button right now, because stories like this, they don't get told enough, and I've got a whole library of them waiting for you. But we're not done yet, because there's one more piece to this story. One final lesson that changed everything, and it's the reason why, even decades later, people still talk about the day Bumpy Johnson made the Westies stop laughing. So what's the lesson here? What did Bumpy Johnson teach the world that night? It's simple. True power doesn't announce itself, it just is. Bumpy didn't need to prove anything. He didn't need headlines or body counts or dramatic showdowns in the street. He just needed to remind people of something they'd forgotten. In Harlem, he wasn't just a gangster. He was the foundation. Remove him and everything collapses. Mickey Spillane learned this the hard way. He came in thinking violence and bravado were enough, but he didn't understand that Harlem wasn't just a territory. It was a system, and Bumpy was the one who made that system work. The Westies stopped laughing because they realized too late that they weren't fighting a man. They were fighting an idea that had been built over decades, brick by brick, favor by favor, relationship by relationship, and you can't destroy an idea with a gun. This story spread through the criminal underworld like wildfire. It became a cautionary tale, a reminder that the loudest guy in the room is rarely the most dangerous. The dangerous one? He's the guy sitting quietly in the corner, watching, waiting, calculating. And here's the thing. This lesson doesn't just apply to gangsters. It applies to life. How many times have you seen someone come in hot, full of confidence, thinking they can take over? And how many times have you seen them crash and burn because they didn't understand the landscape, didn't respect the people who built it? Bumpy Johnson understood respect. He understood patience. He understood that sometimes the best move is no move at all. And that's why, even today, his name is whispered with reverence in the streets of Harlem. So here's my final question for you. What's more dangerous? A man who threatens you or a man who doesn't need to? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you. Seriously. This is the kind of deep dive storytelling that takes time to research and write, and it means the world that you stuck around. But before you go, let me tell you about the next story I'm working on. Because if you thought Bumpy Johnson was a mastermind, wait until you hear about the time Frank Lucas, Bumpy's protege, pulled off one of the most audacious smuggling operations in history. We're talking heroin hidden in coffins of dead soldiers coming back from Vietnam. We're talking about a man who became richer than the mafia by cutting out the middleman, and we're talking about the downfall that nobody saw coming. That video drops next week, and trust me, you do not want to miss it. So hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and I'll see you in the next one. Because in this world, the legends never die. They just get retold.